Good morning guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm filming my January reading wrap up. So in January I read 5 books total and I absolutely loved all of them. Had a really good reading month. I think that's actually a record for me. But yeah, so excited to share my thoughts with you. So the first 3 books that I read are part of a series. They're part of the Lovelight Farms series and this is by B.K. Borison. So here are the 3 books. And I think I spoke about this, well I spoke about all of these in my 24 books I wanted to read in 2024, and I think I was reading the second one at that point in time, but I loved them all. So the first one is called Lovelight Farms. It follows 2 characters, Stella and Luca, and their love story. It is a super sweet book. I love that it's set on a Christmas tree farm. The whole vibe of the place just seems like really cozy, really fun, really wholesome, and you also get introduced to the other characters that have their own stories later on, which is really nice. It's sort of like you get to really connect with them because you get to know them as the books progress. This was really sweet. It definitely covered a few like sadder topics, I guess, especially to do with like Stella, how she came to the town, her situation, how her and Luca met, but it was just a really cute story overall. I would say this doesn't have like super like, I wouldn't say this has a lot of depth to it, but I still really liked it. I feel like it was a really nice read, a really fun read, and a really good one to just start the year off. Then I read In the Weeds, which follows Becca and Evelyn. You meet Becca and Evelyn in the first book, and you sort of know a little bit about them, but not heaps, so it's really good to sort of dive into their world and get to know them on a more personal level in this book. I would say that this, I felt more emotional about the events and what was going on, and I don't know whether it was because it's the second book. I'd already met them and I knew a bit about them and I'd spent more time in their world that I cared more for the characters, or I don't know whether it's just the writing of the book, but either way I felt more emotionally connected to the characters. I felt like this book sort of made me sad, or made like provoked emotion in some parts of the book, which I think is really good because often in romance books that doesn't really happen for me, at least. So I really liked this. It was a really sweet book. Again, this series is very wholesome, so yeah, these books are just, they're so much fun to read. And then the third one, this is actually my favorite one, I think. It's Caleb and Layla's story. You already know a little bit about them, especially Layla. You hear more about her in the other 2 books than you do hear about Caleb. So I sort of, in my mind, already pictured what she looked like and her personality, but I was wrong, and what I thought she was like and her characteristics and her like mannerisms was very different than what she's described in this book. So for me, that was like really interesting. I also loved that she owns her own bakery because personally I like to bake, so that was sort of a fun little connection that I had to her. Caleb seems super sweet. Their story is super sweet. The whole book I was just like absolutely rooting for them, wanted them to have their like happy ever after. Again, a very wholesome story. The 4th one in this series comes out later in the year and I'm very, very excited for it to be released. Overall, I would say there's not like a lot of like tough material in these books. I don't think that there's anything that's like super upsetting, or anything that's like super deep. They're just really cute, really wholesome, fun romance books. So I think that these are really easy to read, really easy to get through, but they're still very interesting and you still find a lot to like sort of connect to and relate to. I also think that out of a lot of the romance books that I've read, these are some of the more relatable ones and more realistic stories, so I really like that about them. Cannot wait for the 4th book to be released. So that was the first 3 books that I read in January. The other 2 books I don't actually have with me. One was my sister's, so I gave it back to her, and the other one I gave to my cousin to read. So I read Verity by Colleen Hoover. I'll put a picture on the screen even though I feel like everyone already knows what this book looks like. I didn't realize that, I'm pretty sure this is considered a thriller book. However, I didn't realize that, and so when I first started reading it I was like, what is happening? I read this book I think in like 2 days maybe, because I just wanted to know what was happening. I wanted to just read more. I wanted to get to know the characters more. I was so confused. I was like on the edge of my seat, and when I finally finished the book, like the last chapter, I was like, what just happened? Like, mind-blowing. I was discussing this with a friend a few days ago and I was shocked because he had the same thoughts. We were talking about theories about what we thought, who we thought was the villain, who was the good like character. We had no idea. It is mind-blowing. It confuses you. The more you think about it, the more questions I had, and I kind of liked that about the book. It kept me on my toes and I was super interested in it, but I also feel like it just wasn't finished because you don't have any answers. So I really liked that. I've watched a few reviews and heard people talk about it saying that they felt like it was rushed and the ending was rushed and they didn't really know what to think, and I do sort of agree with that. Not where I thought the book was going to end, not how I thought the book was going to end. However, I do really like the ending. I think it's just a book that everyone should read, even if you haven't read any other Colleen Hoover books, because that was my first one of hers and I loved it. I can't wait to read more. I loved her writing. I loved the way she creates her characters and the descriptions of them all. I felt like I could really sort of visualize them, and I think that's really good with books, and I love when authors can make you feel like you know the characters. However, it did leave me feeling a little bit creeped out, a bit uneasy, so I ended up reading for my 5th book of the month, Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I'll put a picture on the screen. This was my sister's book that I borrowed from her. I've read all of the other Ali Hazelwood romance books. I love them. I spoke about them in my 24 books I wanted to read in 2024. They are always like science and STEM based romance books, and I love that. I love that it's women in STEM, women in science, and in this book the main character is a physicist, and there is a lot more academic and science content in this book, and she does acknowledge that at the end of the story, but I still really enjoyed it. I would say that like the first few chapters took me longer to get through than usual because of... Okay, I'm sorry that cut off, my camera went flat, but back to what I was saying. I was talking about Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, and the first few chapters are quite heavy on the science and academic content, and that took me a little bit to get through those. I would say I read those chapters slower than I read the rest of the books and other books that I've read recently. However, I do think that that content was relevant and it was necessary to sort of set the scene and for you to really understand the importance of other events that happened later in the book, which was really nice. As always, I love Ali Hazelwood's writing and I love all of her books, and I've said this before, but I love that she writes about women in STEM and how they can have such successful and powerful careers, but also at the same time still have meaningful relationships. I feel like often it's portrayed in society that you either are married or you're in a long-term committed relationship and that's your whole personality, or you have a meaningful career. I feel like there's not many, it's definitely becoming more popular, but there's definitely not as many books and even TV shows and movies where a female character has a really successful, empowering career, especially in like science industries or predominantly male industries, where they have a successful career and also have a successful relationship. So I really like that about her writing. I really like that about her books. Again, this was just a really good read for me. I think I will always love her reading. I'm really excited to read Check and Mate, which is a more recent release from her. I think it came out towards the end of 2023. But otherwise, I don't really have anything else to say. I loved all the books I read this month. I usually don't have such a positive month of reading. Usually I'll have one book that like I wasn't a fan of or whatever, but I loved all of them. I definitely think that going from Verity to Love Theoretically was such a big change. The styles of writing is so different, the storylines are so different, but it was also just like I was so motivated to keep reading because Verity like kept me on the edge of my seat. I was just like so empowered and so encouraged to just pick up any other book because I just had such a good month of reading. So they're the 5 books that I've read this month. I think I'm going to buy my own copy of Love Theoretically so I have it with me, and I can't wait to make everyone in my life read Verity who hasn't already read it, because I have so many thoughts. I could talk about that book for hours, but I don't want to spoil it. So yeah, I am in love with Colleen Hoover officially. I'm still in love with Ali Hazelwood, and BK Borison, the author of the 3 books I talk about at the start of the book, start of the video, what am I saying? Basically, BK Borison, the author of the Love Light Farms books, she is slowly becoming one of my favorite authors. I really enjoyed these books. I know that some people don't think that there's a lot to them or that they have a lot of like depth, but I just think they're so sweet and I think they're very wholesome, and I cannot get enough of her characters and her writing, and they're just really, really, really nice books. So anyway, I've babbled on for long enough. I hope that this made sense. If you want to read any of these books, if you want more of my thoughts on these books, please let me know. I would be happy to provide you with more information or more opinions. But that is my quick little review and reading wrap up. I'm currently reading Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love all of her books that I've read so far, and I think I'm like halfway through Malibu Rising, and so far I really like it. It's definitely not my favorite book of hers, but it's still really good. So you have to stick around for my February reading wrap up to see my full thoughts on that. But I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll see you in my next video.